Welcome to Hope for Med.
Hope for Med.
Welcome back to the Hope for Med podcast. I am your host, Dr. JB, and today's featured guest is Dr. Judit Staneata. She is board certified in physical medicine and rehabilitation, and she specializes in the non-surgical treatment of conditions and injuries of the spine and musculoskeletal medicine. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Dr. JB. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
So, Dr. Staneata, can we start from the beginning? Please share with my audience your origin story.
Absolutely. Originally, I am from Romania. I grew up in a small village in Transylvania, which is a part of the western part of Romania. I'm bilingual, half Romanian, half Hungarian, and that's where I started. Many times I wonder, oh my goodness, see myself as a little girl back in this, without any boys in the world growing up. Mm-hmm. And now I see myself in the United States. It's pretty interesting. Mm-hmm. So I grew up under communism. Life wasn't easy. We didn't have much, very, very humble circumstances. However, it was all good. That's why I completed all my education. I went to medical school in Romania. And then about almost 16 years ago, next month, in 2 weeks, actually, it's going to be 16 years that we came to the United States. And that's a whole different story. The process is called diversity visa lottery, where people who have education, higher education, can apply online from different countries from the world. And if you are selected by the computer, it's called you won the lottery. So I always say I won the lottery. When people ask me how you made it here, I won the lottery. And as you know, I'm in North Carolina, specifically around Fort Bragg area, one of our largest military bases in the country. And people assume that I married into the States, which is very funny. And actually, it's
the
like,
military. Uh-huh.
Yes. And it's funny because I always have to kind of correct them. No, not me. Because faith is like a melting pot. We have so many different people, and it's easier. Like immediately, people pick up on the accent and ask me, "Are you from Germany?" Yeah. No, actually, a little bit more further east, but it's just very, very interesting. So that's my story. And another neat story with my patients is that I'm from Transylvania. They're like, "Oh, you're a vampire." And I always have to say, well, that's the movie is very funny and interesting, but there are no such things as vampires. However, Dracula did exist. So he still has the castle and everything. So it's a very interesting historical hotspot, so to say, and for tourism. Oh, yeah, that's my story. I do neck injection, cervical spine, and we'll get into it, like what I do and stuff. But I usually put a couple of band-aids on the patient's necks on the side, and I'm like, you got your vampire sticks. So we have all kinds of inside jokes, and patients seem to enjoy it. Yeah, I do relate a lot to our military, because many times we have soldiers coming in and they say a word in Romania or ask me how I'm doing in Romanian. It's always like warms my heart, because we have joint operations and bases in Romania as well, the United States. So it's all good. It's a small world. Just like, as we spoke first time, figured out that you were in the community. I have been here since 2014, since training. And I immediately recognized your name. I'm like, wait, I've seen this name. And you mentioned you work in the area, and actually I've seen patients of yours. So thank you.
Yeah.
It is a small world.
It is. It's so tiny, so tiny. Who knew that even though we were literally in the same place, working for the same health system, we never met each other till now. Now that I'm in Florida and you're in North Carolina, and here, this is our meeting grounds. Isn't that crazy?
It was meant to be. It's wonderful. You are doing an amazing job with your space, and thank you for everything you do for our physicians, because it's very well needed. The past couple of years have been tough, at least to say, and it's still going on.
So, tell me a little bit about your experiences when you came to the U.S. You won the lottery. Was life easy? Were you able to retire, put your feet up now that you're a lottery winner?
No, it's no monetary, nothing attached to it. It was only the green card. They said, okay, you can go and become an honorable citizen in the United States. Make sure you work. That was the first thing. And, I had no doubts that it's not going to be easy. So I had to study to take the steps, just like every US graduate as well. Step 1, step 2, and then step 2 had the second part, the CS, which was the oral exam, which made sense. I think they canceled it last year or something like that, which, but it made sense back then to make sure you're proficient in English and you can take a, physical exam and talk to the patients in HPI and all this stuff. So had to go through all that process in order to be able to apply for residency program. So I did my medical school in Romania. I was in second year training in Romania's orthopedics and trauma are together is 6 years residency. So I was in my second year when me and my ex-husband back then, we decided to come to the United States. I was pregnant. 8 months pregnant when we got here. So my son was born. He was born a month later. So literally we came with a couple of luggages, both of us, and just, with lots of hopes and dreams that things are going to work out for the better. And that was my whole goal. And in this big endeavor, taking the world on to hopefully my children are going to benefit from it and have a better life and access to whatever their heart's wishes are, right? So coming to the United States, we were able to manage definitely my ex-husband. He was in the Romanian military. Coming here, he was able to enlist. And then from there, that's how the duty stations came around. He enlisted, and then his permanent duty station was in North Carolina. Going through the testing process and all that, it wasn't easy for sure, because I wasn't as proficient in English. I was speaking English, but, still, thankfully the medical terminology, it's Latin based and it's the same. Like even now, sometimes I say muscles in Latin and they were like, what are you talking about? I'm like, don't worry about it. Just type it in English. And going through that and then applying, of course, what I didn't know is that my heart was in orthopedics, but being a foreign grad, you don't have as many chances unless you know somebody, which is, again, fair is the system. So I applied for internal medicine, family medicine, and physical medicine rehabilitation. And PM&R was kind of one of the closest one where I'm like, okay, I love musculoskeletal medicine. I love to see immediate results, I guess, one of those things. And I'm like, oh, this is pretty close. So I wish I can match there. And I did, which was great because I was able to stay in state. So my husband was stationed at Fort Bragg. I did my training in Greenville, North Carolina, which is East Carolina University system. It was great for 4 years. My daughter was born there. And then I did fellowship training in Winston-Salem for interventional spinal procedures. Mm-hmm. And then circling back around to Fort Bragg Fayetteville area for establishing here as a physician. It wasn't easy, definitely, trying to fit in the system, learning the system. I remember my intern year, but it worked out. I knew that, I guess for us physicians, we are so resilient. We know that, okay, I just have to get through this, first year, intern year, just have to pass step 3, just have to go through the next, years of training, just have to pass boards, just have to pass fellowship training. And then you arrived. Well, it's not that simple. When real life hits, being a fresh graduate, first year attending, it's definitely challenging. It has its own challenges. So we can talk a lot about, all those by years. I guess I remember the times where I was like really, really facing difficulties just because of, personal life. And I think everybody's story is different, right? I think it would have been, sometimes I look back and think maybe if I would have had more help, because not having any family or nobody close by and just myself with the two children, young children, and doing training. I mean, honestly, I don't even know how those weeks and months went by sometimes, but we got through it. And definitely every stage has its challenges. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. So I'm having such a hard time imagining what life was like for you as a second year. You said that medical school and residency are combined. What's the 6 year setup?
Medical school is 6 years. And then I was in my second year of residency training. That was my 8th year.
Got it.
Second postgraduate year.
So you're a second year resident. and you're 8 months pregnant and you won the lottery. And here you are in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and you had a baby. And you're trying to study for these boards and jump through these hoops. And, how did you do it?
So it's interesting because actually, initially we came to New York City. So you can imagine coming from a small town in Pennsylvania, and then ending up in the New York City. It was a huge cultural shock. I was like, oh my goodness. Okay. But I managed. So my son was born there, actually in the Bronx. That's where I knew some Romanian ladies. I met them through other people. And they were very nice and helpful and kind of got me in the system. So I'm forever thankful for that. So I managed. And then my ex-husband, he enlisted in August. So we came in March. Matthew was born in April. And then, he left. He had to go to basic training, right? And then a couple of months later, I get a call. He's like, you need to pack up and move to Texas for his training. So, I managed to, whatever little things we gathered, to pack everything up, ship them to Texas, get an apartment, on, over the phone. And then here I am in November, me and my 7-month-old son moving to Texas. And I remember even now it was so cold and snowing as we departed LaGuardia, going to Chicago, and then ending up in Wichita Falls, Texas, which is up north of Dallas. It's a small Air Force base actually there, and in the middle of nowhere. But in the meantime, I was able to driver's license in New York, and I already started, studying reading and all that stuff. So when we were in Wichita Falls for a year. Mm-hmm. And during this time, I was able to get my CS done, and I was studying for step 1 and step 2. It was very difficult. There is one part of my life which I regret, in a sense that my ex-husband was very goal-oriented, in a sense that, okay, Matthew needs to go to Romania. He has to stay with grandparents. He has to stay with, he can't be in your way of studying. And I ended up taking Matthew for almost 6 months. And that broke my heart. I don't think I slept 6 months. I would FaceTime. He was little. He was only a year and a few months old. But I would FaceTime with them every day just for a few minutes just to see him. He would see me every time the camera would come on, and he would say, Mom or Mommy. I was speaking to him in Romanian and all that stuff. But it was a really difficult time. Like I cannot explain that to anybody. And then, but in the meantime, I passed one of the exams, and I was getting ready to take step 2. And I went and, brought him back, and everything was good again. But these are the sacrifices we made. Were they necessary? I don't know. Would I have done it different now? Absolutely. That little hiatus, between, but I guess it made us stronger. We have a very strong bond with my son. So that's a huge thing, but still I probably will always regret it, that I couldn't manage better. And there were some of them, because then from Wichita Falls, we moved to North Carolina, and we packed up everything, we drove. Like having a 1.5-year-old with you would have been very challenging, right? We had only one car. So because I wasn't working. And once I passed the exams, the steps, I found actually a medical assistant job, because I'm like, okay, this was in probably March 2008. So I worked for a year while I was going to interviews and, just getting myself out there, getting letters of recommendations. I worked as a medical assistant for a group of physicians here in Fayetteville. So it kind of got my feet into the system, and I was able to go even to the hospital and shadow these physicians. So it was good. It was good exposure. Mm-hmm. And just kind of knowing the system and see what, because medicine is the same everywhere you go. It's just you have to, it's so much more advanced compared to where I was coming from, right? Mm-hmm. So that worked out well. And then here comes 2009. Thank God I matched, and I packed up again and just moved with my son to Greenville, North Carolina. And then my husband got deployed for a year, October 2009 to October 2010. Right before he left, I got pregnant with my daughter. So this was intern year by myself with a 3.5-year-old. It worked out, thankfully. But I remember, I don't think I slept much. It's just one of those things in pregnancy with both of my children. I couldn't sleep and I couldn't eat. So I remember on these trauma rotations, we had to go, we had to be here at 6. My son's daycare opened at 6. So I said, okay, I could walk across the street from the daycare to the hospital. And I told my seniors, I said, I can be here at 6:10. Please don't, be understanding. This is what's going on. And they knew, because I wasn't the surgery resident. I was just rotating through, they knew. They weren't as harsh with us, I guess. We were just, the off-cycle ones. And so I remember even now, oh my goodness, I was throwing up in the locker room, 6:00 in the morning. I couldn't eat anything. And as we were rounding on the wards, sometimes they had those little snack cabinets, and they had the graham crackers or the saltine crackers and ginger ale. That was my my food until like noon or so, because I couldn't anything. But, thank God I got through it. And I was trying to just to keep us safe. The baby, my son, he wasn't quite a baby toddler, and myself and the baby, and going through the monthly rotations, because physical medicine rehab, our first year is the intern year. We have 6 rotations of, medicine specialties and 6 surgical specialties. So we had to go through all those, and the way it was lined up. We were still taking the 36-hour calls. Like I remember internal medicine or cardiac ICU, we were doing all those. And that child of mine has seen a lot.
How did you do the 36-hour calls with your child that was in daycare? Was the daycare open, or what did you do?
No, actually, I had, so I met this wonderful couple of nurses. And their daughter was going to the same daycare with Matthew, and they would keep him overnight. And then I found a babysitter who would stay with him, and I would pay her, and she would come to our apartment. So it was good in that sense. But it was, the sacrifice you have to make with the husband deployed, pregnant, and all that stuff. So I guess it worked out. It definitely worked out. But I know it's not easy, and but I'm thankful for the experiences. I'm thankful for that. And then second year of residency came, and that was all inpatient for us, taking call every week and every third or fourth weekend. So it was, but it was good. We got through it. I think in second year of residency was the first time where I experienced the burnout and all this stuff, just because having personal issues as well, not having the support at home from my ex-husband, and just being it was an abusive relationship. So, he would come on the weekends, and it was just trying to manage everything. Even Matthew was always sad. He would ask me, is he coming home on Fridays when we pick them up from daycare and school? And I'm like, yes. And he was just sad. And but we got through it. But that definitely, I think that's when it started. Even my program director kind of brought it to my attention. He was like, Andrea, you have to be, I go by my middle name, Andrea. It's easier. And I remember him saying, once he asked me how you're doing, because probably I looked, I was struggling, not with the training or, because how we are, we show up, we do our best, but I guess in between the lines, they could see. And I opened up to one of my senior residents. I talked to her, and I think she kind of, they try to help me, or at least listen to me, how they can help, knowing that I have someone to talk to and I can trust them. And he brought it up, even my program director. He was like, you have to be careful. You're going to burn out. You are doing too much. But I said, I don't have a choice. I have to do everything, with the children and stuff. And be, a good resident. And I ended up being chief resident 4th year. So of course, piling more and more on that end. But having the personal issues, I guess, that did not help at all.
And I know we're not even like halfway through your story yet, and it's just mind-boggling and amazing. So everything that you've gone through so far up to this point, I just have to interrupt and just throw that in there, right? Because you're talking about obstacle after obstacle, challenge after challenge, and despite that, you are in residency, you're alone, you have a toddler, you're pregnant, you're vomiting on your rounds, and but still you're chugging along. And then despite all of those challenges, not only at work but also at home, you still became chief resident. That's amazing.
Thank you.
So tell me a little bit more about, how did you know that you were experiencing symptoms of burnout?
Just being on the edge all the time and feeling like I cannot catch up. I felt like I couldn't keep up. So on the surface, it looks like I have it all together. Like everybody thought that I really have it all together. When I would go home, I would crash, in a sense that, I couldn't and what I think I missed out more. I didn't spend enough time with the children. I remember grabbing them for day because they were the first one to be dropped off, the last one to be picked up. I was racing. I'm like, okay, they need to be picked up by 6:00. And I would ask my neighbors who were the babysitters as well. And I was like, please, please, please just run because I cannot get out of here, on time. So just trying to juggle all that. It's almost like I felt like there were these crystals in the air and I had to catch them. Right. And I was just exhausted, like all the time. So anxiety, very high level, very, very tired, exhausted. I know I couldn't sleep. I tried to exercise. I couldn't. After I had my daughter, I had a really bad bout of sciatic actually. I tried to go to physical therapy. I couldn't. My schedule did not allow it. I mean, I went 3 times and they showed me some McKenzie type exercise and I'm like, okay, that's it. And I literally was living off 4 months of ibuprofen. So, and then I felt like I wasn't able to cope with stress as well, especially on the weekends when my ex would come home and he would expect, like, he's like, I don't care if you're, this and that, you need to do my laundry. You have to, food has to be cooked. I don't care if you're on call. And when we were on call, we had to go in, like we didn't have to stay in house in second year anymore, but we had to go in. So if something happened in rehab center, I mean, many times they would call me of the night, hey, somebody's crashing, new admit or something, you had to run. Thankfully, I was living like maybe 5 minutes away from the hospital. So it was strategically planned. So it worked out, but those kind of things. And then on a personal level, I think I was just thinking more and more because I always was looking for, and this is not just since we came to the States, it was the same in Romania, like, you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not this, you're not that, like all the chatter all the time and then having the children, you're not a good mom, look how much you work. And I'm like, this is the training. I'm not, I can't, there's no way around it. These are the hours, this is what we have to do. And I always told him, this is a limited time. Until we get through this, it's going to be okay. But unfortunately, there was not much support. And I think looking back now and after I worked on myself, going through therapy and counseling and coaching, and I continue to do that. Looking back inside myself, I think I was thinking pretty fast. I ended up really depressed by the end of training. Although outside, again, everything looked okay. And it looked like I had it all together. I wasn't. And it lasted a very long period of time. Because again, I tried to go to therapy. I got backlash at home saying that, you're crazy and only crazy people to go and this and that. And it even suggested a medicine, right? Sometimes medications are necessary. We all know all this, to help with the brain chemistry, to get some of that strength back, some of that energy back, even if it's just for a short period of time. And he said, I'm going to go to the court and tell them to take the kids from you. So, yeah, I was afraid of doing anything outside of, whatever was perceived normal. Because I was so afraid that he's going to take the children away from, which he wouldn't, because he's still active duty and he's stationed in Italy. So it's not like, but it was rough. It was rough. And then things just got worse after I graduated.
Yeah. So things got worse?
Personally, yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because now I was an attending physician. And then I guess the fact that I was making the route more than he was making, and he said, I don't care. I mean, I remember doing notes 11 o'clock at night and still cooking. I don't care. Food needs to be cooked. It has to be homemade. It has to be, you know what I mean? So those kind of, and physical abuse a lot. And it started affecting the children, especially my son, because he was older. And then my son started saying, Mom, let's just please go away. I can't take this anymore. He developed seizures from stress. And then at some point in time, I couldn't take it anymore. And, I was literally for years praying to God to please take me. I wasn't like actively, God forbid, suicidal or anything like that, but I was asking, please take me. And why did I wake up again the next morning? And I was bargaining, how we do this. Like I have my faith and when I think about it, I'm ashamed of it, but this is my story, right? Because we don't bargain with God. God is, gave us this life as a gift and but I was bargaining. I'm like, if you just don't wake me up, it's going to be fine. The kids are going to be fine because he loves them. But that did not happen. And I tried to reason with my ex-husband, even that summer of 2015, before I packed up and left with the children, reason that, I'm gonna die. Like I can't take this anymore. Like, and he said, better widowed than divorced.
Whoa.
And then Matthew's pleading, Mom, please, let's just go away. I can't take it anymore. And kind of those situations gave me a little strength. And one day I just came home. I booked an apartment in town, came home one day. I took them from school. I said, okay, we have to go pack up what we need now for a week or so, and we're leaving. And that's what happened. That's what happened. So I had to break the vicious cycle. We had to get out from that abusive and toxic environment. And thankfully, I mean, my children, especially my son, even to this day, he's like, Mom, you saved our lives. Technically. Because unfortunately, his attitude towards the situation, towards them or me, did not change. Like, it's not like, that hasn't improved. But I can see them thriving and growing. And my son is almost 16 and my daughter is almost 11. So, I mean, she's 11, she's going to be 12 this year. But it's just one of those things where you look back and I'm like, oh my goodness. And there was a period again of really, really dark and down times right after the separation, going through the divorce for years, because being in the military, he was deposed 6 months, gone, and then back, and everything just dragged and dragged. So yeah, but I'm so thankful that, I'm on the other end, and we can continue to grow and do what needs to be done, and just somewhat enjoy life as much as possible. Mm-hmm. And then life happens and COVID comes, and I got furloughed, so there's a lot more.
You got furloughed?
Yes.
We just keep adding on to the story.
Yes,
Man.
Yes, that was 2020. So yeah.
And so this is when you were on your own. You were already divorced or going through the divorce procedure?
Yes. Yeah. So finally the divorce, so I left September 2015 with the children. Thankfully, I got full custody. All that was done, but the formalities ended in March 2018. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 2 years later, you're independent, completely alone, on your own with your 2 kids,
right.
And then you get furloughed.
When the pandemic hit. So yeah. In the meantime, 2019, I thought that it's time for a change. And I signed up for a job in Winston-Salem where I've trained before.
Okay.
That didn't work out. So talking about workplace bullying, I signed a contract in May 2019, packed up the children. Thankfully, I didn't sell the house. Packed up, moved to Winston-Salem over the summer. And before I started, they told me they are not going to honor my contract.
Wait, they gave you a contract?
Yes.
You signed the contract?
Yes.
And what happened?
They said they are not going to honor my contract. My oral boards were pending, right? Because I took my written ones, and I was just going through so much these years that I was scared to go. I'm going to be honest with you. I would sign up, I would pull back. It is what it is. I mean, I passed everything, But, I was actually I took that summertime, to study and all this stuff. And I was ready. But they knew my status. They knew everything. They knew me from my training still. Things happen to physicians as well. We are not irreplaceable. So, and then I tried to work half of the salary. I couldn't do procedures. They said, you can do this. So I maintained some Saturdays. I would come back from Winston-Salem and work in Fayetteville at my old job to do procedures so I can get a little extra income, because everything just snowballed, right? Mm-hmm. And I did that for 6 months. And I said, I can't do this anymore. And the children were like, let's just go back. At least we have some friends we developed. So I kind of circled back around, moved back in 2019, December, wintertime, Christmas time. And then I resumed my old position, but only part-time. I knew that it wasn't quite what I wanted to pursue. But then 2020 came. I was working 3 days a week doing procedures, and the pandemic hit. So all electives have been shut down, and I got furloughed. So I was like, oh my goodness, okay. And I got COVID.
Oh, wow.
So I remember that last week of March, I worked including Saturday. By Monday, I started having symptoms. I thought maybe it's a cold. By that Thursday, I was sick, like really sick. And then, the children were already online at home. I'm like, okay, stay away from me as much as possible. It was rough. Like about a month, I was like in the, just really difficult times and not having anybody. And again, I'm like, oh my goodness, just somebody bring me a cup of soup or something, which it did happen. One of my nice neighbors, she brought us dinner once, and then my children's school, they delivered pizza one night. So I'm thankful for that. But what can you do? Like we were all, in shutdown, lockdown, so we couldn't really. But we managed, and I reached out a couple of places, and they said this. I'm working with one of the orthopedic groups here in town now, and they said, no, absolutely, we'll take you. Just let us know. So I started working with them in June 2020, and it has been great. It has been actually great. They listen. They after 6 months or so, I think it was my 6 months review. It was a little bit over, but like kind of talking, and they were like, how can we help you to become more successful, to do what you need to do and you're not overwhelmed? Because, evening notes, weekend notes, they're just like the story of our lives. Mm-hmm. And I said, how about a scribe? And since last year, March, I have been having a scribe for the most part, and it has been working out really well. And I'm so thankful because the first time in my life, actually, I have free weekends, which is amazing. And I'm able to manage definitely better from that standpoint. So yes, there were lots of difficulties, but it's almost like I could see a little light at the end of the tunnel.
What an amazing story.
Thank you, Dr. JB.
It really is. You've gone through so much, and here we are, and you're smiling, right?
Yes.
And you've gone through such difficult and dark times, but while you were going through it, nobody knew.
Right.
After you were chief resident,
mm-hmm.
and you were working and you were going through all these experiences at home, in this abusive relationship, at work, did anybody know? No, because I always thought, and so was told, that it was my fault, that I wasn't good enough. I wasn't a good wife enough. I wasn't a good mother enough. I wasn't smart enough. I wasn't pretty enough. It was all my fault. And if only I could, even after the separation, I remember these thoughts were going through my head. If only I would have prayed harder. If only I would have done something different. Like, I don't know, honestly, but now I know that all that reasoning was because those pathways in my mind were deep, and I had to do lots of work in order to realize it was not my fault, and we should not treat each other like that. And I didn't, because I was really ashamed. I'm really, really ashamed of my situation. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, we made it to America and then living the dream and say something like that? No. And people didn't know. Like, even later on, I started opening up because, some of the Romanian people from the community, there are a few families here, they were shocked, and they were like, oh, they were actually blaming me. They said that, oh, now I made myself a doctor, and got rid of it. That was his story. But I told them after I met up with them, I'm like, no, you guys have no idea what I've been through. And, they are the children, and, close friends knew, like really close friends of mine. They knew what was I going through. And they were actually upset why I stayed as long, because they knew him from back Romania. And they were like, you are going to destroy your whole life and yourself. And very, very private. But, now I tell my story. I'm trying to encourage other people. Please don't stay. If anything like that, even a fraction of that is happening, it's not worth it. And especially if there are children involved. I grew up in the same situation, unfortunately. That Eastern European mentality that you have to stick it out, you have to get through it. It doesn't matter, and it's not good. I remember when my son was begging me to leave, I remember me begging my mom, please go, because my stepfather was very abusive. And she didn't. She never left. So that was kind of
something I was used to. And I thought, and especially my grandmother, bless her, she always said, we all have to carry our cross. And I'm like, okay, we carry our cross, but God is not somebody who would punish us. We didn't do anything wrong, right? But all these things I had to go through, I had to learn, I had to realize. And my children were always encouraging me because I tell them stories about, excuse me, during the time of communism, how we didn't have this and how we didn't have that. And I make jokes like when they say, oh, I don't like this and don't like that. I'm like, sure, first world problems. When I was a child, we didn't have this. We didn't have a choice, or we didn't have all these, goodies and all the choices and everything. And I always tell them how blessed we are here and the abundance and everything. So they always encourage me, Mom, you should tell your story. You should tell your story. But, it's not something, I'm not very artistic. We are very matter of fact, being physicians, we know this, we have to have evidence and all that stuff. And it's interesting. One other physician reached out to me at some point. I've known her online only. And she's like, would you be part of this kind of project, about immigrant women? And I said, sure. So that's how I ended up, opening up and talking about my story, my immigration story a little bit. It's in an anthology. So it's a book we wrote, 22 of us from all over the world. We came together. Oh, wow. And that's since then I have been opening up more and talking about my story and just encouraging, anybody. It doesn't have to be a medical professional necessarily, but I know that our profession brings so many different people together from all over the world at every level. And I can relate to the women who have been through abusive relationships. And I just want to encourage everybody to reach out for help, because I think that was one of the mistakes I made. I was so afraid that I didn't go to therapy early enough. I was very scared. And again, the shame, like, what do you mean you're a doctor and you have problems? But now I'm very straightforward with my patients and I talk to them about my issues and I can relate to them. So I have, after I had my son, initially I had low back problems and, radicular pain and all this stuff. And then after my daughter again, and it persisted. Every so often it flares up. And I always tell my patients, I'm like, I know exactly what you feel. So I know what's good for you and how can I treat you. So it's and then sometimes they say, well, I'm so glad you know what it means. And they say, no, we don't mean like that, but they are so sweet, but they understand. I know how it feels when you are hurting and stuff. Mm-hmm. And the same thing, I open up and recently actually a patient came in and she was saying, she was very nice and very understanding. And she was like, how are you really doing? Like, how are you? Because we know that our healthcare professionals are burned out and everybody's just overwhelmed. And because of, the past 2 years for COVID and just, it's a lot. It's a lot to take. And I said, honestly, I'm not doing too well. I was honest to her because I just started a new treatment for my, I ended up having complications, getting COVID second time, 2020, before all the vaccines, everything came out.
COVID 2 times.
Yes, 7 months apart to date. And first time around was very neurological. I had extreme headaches and neurological pain in the sense that and we know this from medicine that, viruses usually, they can inoculate nerve roots and nerves. And I had radicular pain, like both upper extremities, both legs shooting down. Like I could do a few hours in the mornings, like get the children ready for their online school and getting them, fixing breakfast and lunch. And I said, I need to lay down, like the dizziness and all that stuff. So I had to go to physical therapy for months. I developed a really bad residual left upper extremity radicular pain, which I have a little underlying, degenerative disc disease, but it's nothing like nothing to that extent. And I couldn't give myself an injection. So I just went to physical therapy. Anyhow, so that was first time. Second time around, it was more respiratory, right? And I didn't think much of it. But then it was in November 2020. I didn't think much of it. The holidays came. I kept being very tired and just short of breath, not being able to exercise anymore. I wasn't doing a whole lot. You see my bike behind me, a little Peloton here and there and walking. That was my jam, and some stretching. But I couldn't keep up. Like I would go up and down the steps in my house and I would be short of breath. Like, what's going on? It was so noticeable, the shortness of breath, that I would stop in the middle of the sentence when I was talking to the patients. And they would ask me, are you okay? I'm like, yeah. And then keep going, And then my scribe said the same thing. She's like, you do realize that you stop while you talk. I'm like, I just get tired. I don't know. So finally, in March last year, I went to the doctor and I had my first CT scans done. And sure enough, lots of infiltrates in my right lung and, all atelectasis, all the good stuff. But the pulmonologist said, well, just watch it because we've seen it a lot with COVID. You had been about 4 or 5 months out from COVID, so it should be okay. Let's just check in 6 months. The whole summer, nothing has improved. So I still feel the same. I still, and finally in September when I had my second scans and all this stuff, finally, he said, oh, you're fine. Let's see you in a year. I had to go get a second opinion. And honestly, we don't make the best patients. And I would have gone with the first opinion, but my coworkers, everybody was like, and my close friends, and everybody, you need to go to figure out what's going on because you can't keep going like this. I'm like, I'm fine. I mean, something's in my lung, but, it doesn't look bad. When we say it doesn't look bad, it's not cancer. We keep pushing, right? And unfortunately, it's one of our traits too, right? As physicians that we put ourselves last. Mm-hmm. So I went, got a second opinion. He said, no, we have to do bronchoscopy biopsy. This should not last this long. It has been almost a year out for your second COVID. Well, sure enough, it came back and it grew very interestingly, this mycobacteria, which is, as you know, it's very common in patients who are immunocompromised. Now, thankfully, everything else looks okay in my system. Like, I'm good about getting my annual, like mammogram and my OBGYN. So I think that's fine. My blood work looks fine. So, but we looked deeper and it ended up being this complex mycobacteria, which now I just started treatment 2 weeks ago. It's a year-long treatment. So circling back to what I meant to say about the patient, she was really nice and just kind of really asking, are you guys doing okay? Me and my medical assistant, my x-ray tech, were doing an injection. And I was honest. I opened up and I said it was because every day by 2:00 in the afternoon, I get very tired. Mm-hmm. I get really short of breath and I'm just like, I keep going, right? Because we have full schedules. Mm-hmm. And I told her, I'm like, this is what's going on with, and most likely I contracted this infection, which has been now in my lungs for a year and a half almost, because my immune system dropped so much. And now I'm waiting for treatment and this is what's going on. So she was so sweet and I was so thankful. And she even turned back around and brought me flowers, like in a really nice note, like. And that's what I'm trying to tell and always get close with my patients and explain to them that I can relate to them. Like, I understand you're in pain. I understand we're going through all this. I understand life is not easy and it's never going to be the same as it was before. This is our new norm and we're just trying to get through it. But I could tell that people have been suffering a lot. And this has been a long 2 years suffering, like lots of things, many people lost loved ones, right? Lots of things where people are used to doing, they could not do it anymore. And I always say that my busiest months are November and December due to the procedures, right? Because patients meet their deductibles and everybody just wants to come in and they want, I want my shot before the New Year's, before my insurance starts over. And, it's one of those things. And usually it gets really busy and really hectic. I noticed that around the holidays, patients, and not just patients, like I guess all of us, we get a little emotional and different things come out, like different sides of us, right? Like I know I get very emotional because I miss my childhood Christmases, right? Mm-hmm. The way it was, the foods, like this and that, from back home. And I always think about those. And I hear these Christmas songs in different language, in English, and I know to sing them in like 4 different languages, the same song. Mm-hmm. So it's like, and I notice in patients that, some of them are happier, some of them are sadder because, if you lost somebody, of course, it's going to be different. And I said, okay, it's going to calm down. Things are going to get better. We are end of February. Everybody's still on the stress bed. I can tell everybody is just really, and with the current situation worldwide, unfortunately, it's not helping. Mm-hmm. So I always try to encourage my patients and just have that extra step and say, hey, I hear you. Yeah. I'm here for you if you need anything. It has been rough. I had patients who had loved ones, even children, grown children who they lost them to suicide during these years. Mm-hmm. It's a lot. It's a lot. And there's a huge need for mental health help for all of us. Not just, I'm open about it now. I'm not ashamed. I know that, all of us would benefit from counseling, or it doesn't have to be even professional. Have a good friend, phone, call somebody. Just get in touch and somebody who you can trust because it's not easy. It's not easy, everything we carry. And I learned this the hard way because I was trying to carry everything myself. And it was just not, I guess it just pushed me deeper and deeper and deeper in the dark place. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, all I can say is, wow, really, I don't have a lot of words to really express just how profound your story is and how much sharing your lived experiences will help others. Because I can assure you that you're not the only person that's gone or been involved or maybe even still is involved in an abusive relationship, right? You're not the only person who is working as a physician, but still expected to be a quote unquote good mother and, cook and clean and do all of those things in addition to coming home after working long days.
Thank you. Thank you. I know. And I'm very aware. That's why I'm always, of course, in our work environment, we work with different people, and I'm always so careful with the single mothers because I know what it means. And especially who don't have any support or, family support or anything, it's not easy, but there is hope. And always, again, just don't stay alone. I think that's our biggest concern, because we see it at every level. I mean, even just this year, I can count more than one hand, like how half a dozen physician suicides I've heard of that, right? So it's just rampant, and we try to fit for everybody's needs, but we have to realize that sometimes we have to take a step back and just rest. I have a hard time with it too, because I know on some podcasts they ask me, so what do you do to relax? And I know many times people are like, oh, do take a day off for yourself, go to the spa, take a bubble bath. Many times we don't have the time to slow down. Like one of my friends was asking me through a message, she was like, I hope you're resting. And because she was asking, what are the updates with your treatment? And I'm taking 3 different antibiotics, like JB, and my stomach is upside down. And I don't think it's going to go away because you know how it is. Every day you just read, you have to do the same thing. And I'm miserable in the mornings, but I kind of work around it with water and some snacks and stuff. But I was messaging, she was like, well, I'll let you rest. And I'm like, I can't rest. I was running around before our interview, go and pick up the children, make sure everybody's home on time. So it's like, those kind of things. So it's not always just a bubble bath and a spa and this and that. For me, spending time in quietness, it helps. Of course, all of us is different. Everybody's different, and everybody has a different way of, relaxing. But getting enough sleep, that's what I learned. I'm giving myself permission that at least once or twice a week, when I feel like I can't, like 9 o'clock, okay, I tell my children, this is it. We have to, I have to get some rest. And especially with this chronic fatigue, everything, still going on and developing. And I always look forward for the weekends because usually I can't sleep in too much. So I get up early anyways. So it's quiet in the house and we don't have to rush out and be somewhere, schools and work and stuff. So I have that, I can reserve, half an hour for myself when I can just think and reflect. And that's therapeutic to me. But I always, going out on a walk, that's again, it's good. And I give myself permission to not be the perfect, and thankfully my children are old enough and they hear me listening to all these podcasts in the car, including you, because I they loved your intro and outro. Oh my goodness. I said, oh, that's Dr. Jib. And they were like, what? She's singing? I'm like, yeah, she's singing. I call it Automobile University. And I borrowed it. I didn't come up with a term, but I think it's great for them to see and listen. And they were like, yeah, Mom, you should do that. You should take a day off for yourself. So thankfully they are older and they understand and they are more independent. But, when they are young, you have to be there for them. They're not going to wash themselves when they are toddlers and stuff. So it's definitely, it gets better. And that's what my encouragement is for everybody. If it's really bad, don't stay. It's not worth it. Not for the children at all. Children are better off if they are out of a vicious cycle or a toxic environment. And then for us as personally, whatever we do in life, I think, we have a special mission and we have to find it. and fulfill it, and not let anything or anyone tell us different. Because I lived in that, like, you're lower, you're not as good, you're this, you're that. I'm not perfect. I know that. And I make mistakes, or I'm going to make mistakes. We're humans. But don't let anybody to dim your light to the point where you're in a dark place.
Wow. I usually end these podcasts with, do you have any pearls of wisdom you'd like to share with my audience? And you've given so many pearls of wisdom. But I'm not sure if you have any additional ones you want to share as your parting words.
Always reach out for help. That's my biggest, and don't do it alone, because, that's my biggest word of wisdom for healthcare professionals, for women in general, because we are considered the weaker. I don't think we are the weaker side, but it's just because we are so busy and we settle. Because many times fear, shame, just the fear of unknown, not wanting to ruffle the feathers, but we have to step up. We have to stand up for ourselves. And if we don't have a place at the table, we have to bring the chair. And this is for professionally speaking as well. So definitely, and to have our voice heard. That's our biggest. I think that's some of the takeaways I would recommend.
Yeah. Who says a doc can't rap? DOCTORJB. The greatest doctor to ever touch the mic. The greatest podcast ever broadcasted or pre-recorded. Come learn some. Each one teach one. I'm done.